So today I'm going to show you how to do that stab binding again. Now it's supposed to be the traditional Japanese hemp leaf stab binding. But last week when I was doing it with the first group, I realized I forgot to poke one extra or two extra holes. I forgot to have you guys do it and I was like, oh man. So it's not traditional. It's slightly off. Slightly. I have my needle and my book already pre-hole stamped. Actually, this isn't my journal. It's just I realized again that you wouldn't be able to see what I'm doing because my pattern is so amazing. And just like before, the thread is special. It's linen waxed thread. So it's just easier to bind books with this, but sometimes it's hard to get it through the needle. Just make sure you're using your nails and you really like squeeze and like sharpen it almost to get it super, super straight, super flat. You don't have to tie it on. The thread is very thick, so what I do is I'll use my nail just to like really like pinch it so it gets it a little skinny to shove it through the needle. And then because it's so thick, the needle will just stay on. You just need to have about like a finger's length of tail. And then what you're going to do is you're going to count your pages. So for you guys have about 42 pages or so, something like that. So at like the 20th or 21st page, whichever you decide. But before you do that, this was my template. You know, that's how we punched our holes. So this is trash. So I'm just gonna fold this away because I don't need it. So you should be looking at the cover when you're sewing. Don't look at this little guy that we like folded and all that stuff. Once you get that, you're gonna start counting your pages. You're trying to find the middle of your book. Now again, the reason why I'm using this like blank white book, my pretend book, is that way you can see how I stitch. Because if I use my actual journal, the cover is just, it's too hard to see the stitches with the pattern. So that's why I'm doing this way. Also, this is my spine. Like I have a really tall, skinny book. Just to, show you guys. Okay, so we found the middle of our book, roughly the middle of the pages. And what you're going to do is we're going to look at, so you have 4 holes. I always think of this as like A because it's closest to inside the book. And then you have those 3 near the edge. What I want you to do is go into your second hole on the A strip. A is with the 4, B is with the 3. So on the second hole, right here, you're gonna put your needle through. So I'll put my needle through that second one. And then you're gonna pull your thread all the way out. Just, you're gonna leave a tail. And it might be a little hard because now your needle's coming through with thread.
We have to open it,
take
right?
your time. Yeah, you wanna find the middle of your book because that's where the tail's gonna stay. So for you guys, it's probably like the 20th page or so. So just count to like roughly the 20th page or just guesstimate, kind of look at the middle. And then you're gonna go through that second hole from inside and then pull your needle through.
Second hole from the middle line, right?
Yeah, so like if you look at, my book, you have the 4 that are closest to the inside of the book, and then the 3 that are closest to the edge. You want the second from that inside 4.
Okay.
And then you have a little tail. Now the tail, you want to leave, again, about a finger's, like a little bit more than a finger's amount. So that's good for me. Like roughly about like a little bit more than a finger or so. Because that tail is going to stay inside the book. So what you do is you just kind of like tuck it in and then close your book. It's just going to sit there for right now. So you have your thread coming out of the cover. Just in case this gets confusing. So your thread's coming out of the second hole from that's closest to the inside of the book. And what we're going to do now is we're going to get the whole entire journal, the whole book, and you want your thread to go from the second, wrap around, and it's going to go back into that second from the back. So I'm coming out of that second hole, tail is trapped in the middle. I'm going to wrap this thread around the whole entire book, and I'm going to go into that second hole. The exact same one that it's coming out in the front of the book. And I'm trying not to go inside the thread. Like, you know how when we would do the sock monster and stuff, sometimes the needle like goes through the other thread, like it'll go through the little woven thread. I'm trying not to, but it happens. And I'm not making it too tight because that tail is inside the book and I don't want to pull it and then have that tail come out and then have to start all over again. So this is like pretty loose. I'll tighten it at the end when it's all snug. So now I'm here back at the second hole, just where I started. Now this time I'm going to go up to the first hole, put my needle through, and go all the way through the whole entire journal. So it's going to make this line right across. So I'm going to go to the first hole at the top. Are you not lined up? Oh, that's why. There we go. So I came out of the second. Now I'm putting my needle through the first. And I'm going to pull it through the whole entire back of the journal. So your front looks like this, has a little upside down L. And then the back just has that one little line, and we're coming out of that top sewing hole. So now I'm on the back. And what I'm going to do is now I'm going to jump to that diagonal. What I'm making, I'll show you what we did last week. What they're going to turn into are all of these little Ys. That's the hemp leaf stab binding, or these little Ys that we're going to be creating right now. So here I am at the back, the first hole, and I'm going to go to this hole in the center, the first hole on the B length, where it's closest to the edge. I'm just going to put my needle again. Now we're going all the way through the whole entire book. front, we're coming out through that little middle hole. In the back, we have that little bit of that diagonal line. What you'll find is that it starts to have a pattern. And like only because I do this so much that I know, I remember the pattern, but usually, almost always, whenever we come out at the front, just like when we did this first one, we're gonna take it and wrap around all the way and then go back into that first hole. So like we did with when we first started, we wrapped around the whole entire book and then went back through the same. We're gonna do the same thing here. We're coming out of this little hole down at the bottom, closest to the edge. I'm gonna wrap the thread just around the whole entire edge of the book. And I'm gonna put the needle through where we just came out of, that bottom hole. So that's my back, and this is the front. So now that I'm back in the front, you know, I'm in that smaller hole, that first hole near the edge. Now I'm gonna start the Y. So I'm gonna take my needle and go into the second hole right here, and it's gonna do this. I'm gonna start that Y. So take my needle, go through the second hole, all the way to the back, all the way, all the way. Now on the back, I'm gonna go into that little hole, that diagonal hole, to just start finishing up the Y on the back side of the book. Again, I'm gonna go all the way to the front. So on that back, my back cover, the Y is starting to kind of finish up. On the front, I'm still just right here. And now same thing, I'm gonna finish up the Y here on the front of my cover. So from the little hole closest to the edge, I'm gonna go back up to the first hole and go all the way to the back. So my Y is done in the front. I'm now at the back. So just like before, you know, here's my Y on the back and it has that start of the box. And I wanna finish this side. So just like before, I'm coming out. I'm gonna get the book and I'm gonna wrap the thread all around the spine. And then I'm gonna go through, what's happening on my thread? I was coming out over here. I'm gonna wrap around the spine and I'm gonna put my needle through the first hole and go all the way to the back again. So now I have my little box. So before we finish off our box, because what you'll notice on the front is we have our Y and we have that nice little top of the box. Before we do that on the back, we're gonna make a box here in the corner. So like what we did right now, I'm gonna take this thread, we're coming out on the back of the book, and this time I'm gonna go this way to the left because I'm gonna make a little box right here. So I'm gonna go, I'm gonna wrap the thread around the top of the book and again go through that first hole all the way to the back. And you want it to be snug, but you shouldn't have your book like collapsing right here. Like if you see that your entire book is like folding in because you're pulling so tightly, it should be tight around these edges, but not so tight that it's like ripping the paper. Now, this is where I messed up. I forgot to do like the traditional Japanese hemp leaf binding. There's another hole around here, and you do like this little cool little Y inside this square. I don't know what I was thinking. Doing too many, that's what I was doing. And I totally forgot. So we're gonna skip that one part. And now we're gonna finish this box. So we're gonna cross over. So just like the front, we have our box. We have our first Y contained in its little box. And we're gonna jump to this second hole. And just like before, go through the hole and go all the way to the front. So now the back and the front should look identical. They should both have the little Y inside its own little box. So now we're here in the front. Again, let me know if I'm going too fast or if you need me to stop or go back, because I can't see what you guys are working on. So I feel like I'm going slow, but this is also the second time I've done this, so it might just be to me. So just like before, we're coming out of that second hole. We're here at the front of the book, and we're gonna go all the way over to the third hole, right over here. We're gonna go straight across. We're gonna start our next box. So I'm gonna go to the third hole, all the way through to the back. So you should look like this. You're starting off that, our next box. And with these boxes, we always start with like finishing off the box kind of thing before we start working into the Y. So I'm coming out of the third hole on the back. I'm going to take my thread, wrap it around the spine, and go back into that third hole. So just like before, we're going to start the Y. So I'm coming out of the third hole, and I'm going to start that Y on the second of the holes closest to the edge. I'm going to go through. Just like before, whenever we first start, we're going to do that little arm or body of the Y before we start the extra points. So I'm coming out of that second hole closest to the edge. I'm going to wrap around the spine and then go back into that same second hole. So basically you have the Y starting to happen over here. And we're back at the front. So we're here, and we're actually going to go back into the second. We're not going to go to the third yet. Over here, this is what the front looks like. So for my Y, I went to the left, not the right. I'm going to finish the Y here in the back. So I'm going to go back to the diagonal. Now I'm going to go to that third hole to finish the Y in the front. So you should have two Ys in the front. In the back, you have the two Ys, but this box isn't closed yet. And we're going to leave that open for now. Don't close it. The temptation is to close it like we normally do, but don't close it yet, because that's how we're going to end the book. So here I am in the back of my cover. I'm at the third hole. So here's the first one, the second one, the third one. So I'm at the third. I'm going to jump now to that fourth hole. We're going to start our next box. Again, when we first start the boxes, we want to do that long body of the box. So I'm coming out of the fourth. I'm going to take my thread, I'm going to wrap it around the spine, and then go back through that fourth hole. This time, what we're going to do, we're actually going to finish the side box before we start doing the Y. So we did this little side box here, and then we started our Ys. This time, before we get this one done, we're going to start with this. So here I am at the fourth hole, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to wrap around the bottom all the way around, and the fourth is going to go back into this hole, back into the fourth hole to finish that little box here on the side in the end. So your front should have the two Ys, getting ready to do that third one, and then our little box here in the corner. In the back, you should have the two Ys. One of them's open, so we're not done. And we've already finished this little box. We're going to start putting that Y in right now. So now we're going to go down to start our Y. So here I am coming out of the back into that middle area. Just like before, we're going to do that body length first before we start the Y. So I'm going to go right here. I'm going to wrap up and go back into that same hole. So now we're going to start our first part of our Y here in the back. So I'm going to go from the diagonal to the fourth hole. Again, I'm trying not to go through the thread, but it's hard. So my front, my back. Now from the fourth, I'm going to go across up here at the top. So now I'm going across. I'm finishing off that Y here in the back. Now I'm going to finish the Y here in the front. So now in the front, all my Ys are done. They're all ready. My little leaves. The back. What we have left to do is just close off this last box. What is not challenging, but what you need to do is we're going to stop sewing. So we got to find that tail again. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take off the binder clip. That scratch paper we can get rid of because we don't need it anymore. And what I need to find is that tail that's in the book somewhere. Here it is. So there's the tail. Because what I want to do is I want to close this off, finish off the box, but I don't want to go all the way back to the front. The front's done. I want to go to where the tail is so I can stop the sewing. Almost. Here we go. So here's my tail. What you have to do, and this takes a little finessing, is I'm going to put my needle through this hole so that way it finishes it. But I need it to go through and then come out in the middle of the book. So I'm going to like put it in, and I kind of like tilt the needle to the side and just open the book to see if I can get it inside here. So let me go through. And I kind of just like, I just put the needle in because it's, you know, it's gone through there a lot. I kind of start to just open the book a little bit to see if I can see the needle. You can just see it right there. So there's the needle. So now I'm going to shimmy it in. And this one might be a little bit harder to get through simply because you have so many pages. So just, take your time. Don't hulk it. And so now your Ys are done front and back. Before you tie it off, because that's what we're going to do with the tails. Before we tie it off, what I'm going to do is go through and check. Because what you'll see is that these are really, really loose. They don't have to be super tight, but they shouldn't be like this loose. I shouldn't be able to make spaghetti with them. So what I do is we started here on the second hole. So I'm just going to start kind of checking these guys. So once you get these tightened, so you guys aren't watching me forever, you're going to tie your knot inside here. Take your needle off, put it back on the fabric. Don't lose your needle. If you broke your needle in your book, just be careful. That point is in there somewhere. And you're just going to do a double knot. And you could trim off some of this extra tail if you have a lot like I do. Just like what we've always done. Cross over, go through the loop, pull, 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 tight, tight, tight. I'm going to do it again. Cross over, through the loop, pull, pull, pull. And then one more time, just to be on the safe side. And then when you trim, remember, you never want to cut so close to the knot because you could accidentally cut the knot and then have to do this all over again, but with thread that you stole from your family. And then with your needle, you can just lay these guys down. Because of the wax, they kind of will stick wherever. So I'll lay them down and then just push them into the spine, kind of hide them a little bit so that way they're not sticking up. Just like that, little knot.